Locking up in a cold room alone? Crying yourself to sleep on snowy nights? Pitying yourself for having no one? Resenting others for leaving you aside? Been there, done that. It sucks to be alone this time of the year. Everybody but you seems to have someone to lean on. All of a sudden, you're tossed aside because everyone has their family to share the joy with, and you're just there, all on your own, unneeded. Hey internet friends, I'm Kim and I talk about everything through the lens of a immigrant zillennial living in the West. That includes how much I hate life sometimes, especially during winter and the holiday season. Let me explain how my life sucks as a lonely young adult. I came to Canada nearly 4 years ago all on my own. I left my family and friends behind with hope to build a better future in the West, without knowing that life abroad can be brutal. I have spent Christmas and New Year alone for 3 years. No family nearby, no friends to celebrate with, nothing fun in my small town. A failed long-distance relationship, plus COVID. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But if you're in the same shitty spot, I want you to know that you're not alone. I had it rough, and here's how I've lived through that. Let's start with the not so healthy habits first. The first winter in Canada, I was at rock bottom. Laid off from my waitress job with so much time to waste. I was stress eating a ton of sugar, which broke my skin out horribly. Binge watched Netflix through the nights, giving me nothing but dark circles and no energy the day after. I spent hours on social media, which wasted my time and also inflated my resentment as I scrolled through my friends' happy photos. I had nothing to post but old photos and depressing quotes. Nobody wanted that negativity. I felt like a piece of shit. I had no job, no friends, and no hope of a bright future ahead. So how did I manage to turn my life around? My family FaceTimed me from time to time. My friends back home texted me once in a while. Every single time I told them I was doing fine, nobody knew I was dying inside. But after a couple of times like that, I realized a pattern. I felt uplifted when I was talking to someone, and the energy quickly died down when I got off the phone. I was yearning for affection so much, even the remote, virtual kind of affection helped. So my first advice is to fill up that void with whatever company you can get, even if it's not physical. You might be hesitant to bother people at first, but honestly, just do it. I thought being needy would make me a nuisance. I was ashamed for being in the condition I was in. While it's true that some people will ignore you, all you need is one person who can pick you up. That one is out there, but you won't find them unless you look for them. Contact your friends and family whenever they're free. Go online and join in some discussions, even if it's just with strangers on the internet. See a therapist and talk your problems out if you have the means to do so. You know what? Let's practice with my first advice. Need an internet stranger to hear you vent? I'm right here and my comment section is wide open. I'll also be available on my Instagram DM and email if you want to keep things private, so feel free to shoot me a message. I've been through it alone, but you don't have to. Another advice, which might sound a little crazy, is to fake that you're okay. On the calls I had with people, I always bragged about the beautiful life I planned to build for myself. My imaginary life. I was still drowning in self-loathe, but I did not let anyone around find out about that. People just need to know the strong and confident Cam, not the weak crybaby that occasionally hovered over self-destructive thoughts. I was questioning my luck, my destiny, my capabilities. I hated myself, but I luckily still love myself as much. And I refuse to believe that I'm a permanent failure. My thought was, I've been hiding my struggles from people since forever, so maybe I should as well bury my head in the sand. I started hyping myself up by focusing on the very few amazing things I had, doing things I'm great at without spending a fortune, and temporarily forgetting about my massive lack. Being alone is great because you have so much time and you have the power to decide whether to waste it or use it for something worthwhile. You have only yourself to take care of, which means you only need to focus on making yourself feel good. For me, I gradually cut down on the habits that made me feel shitty and started picking up a bunch of things that gave me joy. And you know what? Nobody gives a flying fuck, so you can do whatever the hell you want. No judgment, no naysayers, no bullshit. There's nobody you need to please other than yourself, which is a luxury that I barely have now that I'm a self-sufficient adult. On to the next advice, which might be even weirder than the previous one, is to use self-delusion for the sake of self-improvement. Conflicting, I know. But start with visualizing a badass version of yourself that's remotely your miserable, depressed, lonely self. Remember the beautiful life plans I bragged about to people on phone calls? I was lying to people, so I made sure those sounded believable. Now if you're lying to yourself, how about going crazier? I had so much time to waste that I picked up journaling. I was writing about an imaginary life where I was already having lots of friends, being so close to my family, traveling around the world, inspiring people while working a fantastic job. I wrote everything in the present tense. At the very moment when I was all on my own with no family around, was an absolute nobody, and completely jobless. Let your imagination run wild. Be specific, descriptive, detailed. You have time to waste and nobody's gonna bother checking your wishful journal anyway. Nobody is gonna know you're crazy. Best case, you somehow subconsciously work on those visualization and eventually manifest it. No longer lonely and sad. Worst case, you have a pastime other than scrolling TikTok and most of the wildest dreams that you once had that could be very interesting to revisit years later. In my case, 3 years after my darkest time, here I am. I have a handful of friends, I'm flying to Europe next week to spend the holiday with my extended family, and I'm working my dream job that allows me to better the lives of quite a few people. Without feeling lonely and sad, I wouldn't have been able to celebrate the person that I've become today. The strong person that was once weak, and the occasionally weak person that is still growing strong. So to my lonely and sad internet friends, please do not give up on yourself. What you're feeling right now, loneliness and sadness, are just temporary states. It might feel extremely overwhelming right at this moment, but they are not a part of you. Remember how it feels to be sad and lonely, not to dive deeper into it, but to motivate yourself to get out of it. You're gonna be so proud of yourself the day you're finally at a better spot, and I promise you, that day is very near as long as you keep pushing through this difficult time, just a little bit more. If you're bored and have time to waste, you might want to check out my vlog where I share a typical day in my life now that I'm no longer sad and lonely. If you want to take this chance to better yourself, which I highly recommend, maybe check out my video where I share my secret tips to glow up. And subscribe if you want to hear me rant and ramble again. I'll see you again soon. Peace and love.